Once again, welcome to the class, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are going to continue with the first domain, that is the governance portion of the risk management. And in the last class, that is yesterday, we discussed about the process of governance. So can anyone tell me in a very short and sweet manner, what do you mean by governance? No explanation, elaborate explanation. Very short explanation. What
So
is that governance?
ability to meet the stakeholders' expectations or requirements.
The ability to make the stakeholders recommend is the job of the governance and management put together. But governance is what? Very
Giving
simple.
directions to the stakeholders.
Directing
Exactly.
and controlling.
So the governance job is to mainly to ensure the objectives of the organization are set by evaluating the stakeholder needs. That is the simplest of all the explanation. So yesterday I gave you the example that why we call that country's administration as a government, not as a management. Because the country, the head of the country, the governing head, whether prime minister, president, whatsoever name you can call him governor, chief minister, whatsoever the name is. But that person need to ensure that every stakeholder in the country or the area under his control, his or her control, they should be treated equally. Please, all of you mute your mics. I told you, like there are sometimes background noises. I'm going to disturb others. Please keep checking your mics and keep it mute mode, please. And so when we talk about the governance is ensuring the stakeholders are taken care and setting up an objective that is going to help everybody in an organization that includes the stakeholders. So when you talk about the enterprise governance, what are the two elements of enterprise governance yesterday we discussed?
Corporate governance and
Corporate
business
governance
governance.
and enterprise, business governance and corporate governance.
Okay, so the corporate governance and business governance, in short, is called conformance and performance. So what are the three things that comes under corporate governance?
Strategic alignment, risk management, assurance process.
Perfect. So what about the business governance?
Value addition or creation, resource utilization, performance monitoring.
Perfect, Pooja. Great. So when you talk about the corporate and the business governance, as I have been telling you that both are very much required for an organization to achieve what is supposed to do, that is achieving the objectives. It is possible that the management can do their job perfectly. They may deliver the results as per the objectives set by the organization. But if the governing body do not have a proper risk management, that is the compliance or the corporate governance, or there is no strategic alignment, the efforts may be wasted. The same way, you may have a perfect strategic alignment or risk management. Still, the value creation or the risk or resources utilization or performance monitoring is lacking. Still, the objectives may not be achieved. So, in short, both need to be present and both should complement each other. That is what we are going to actually manage. One of the elements, one of the most important elements that helps the organizations to achieve their potential is the risk management. Yesterday, I actually drew up a diagram that clearly shows how IT risk management has a place in the organization's governance. So when you look at risk management, it is not supposed to be seen in a piecemeal manner, even though the subject C risk or the certification C risk talks about the IT risk management, but it is not IT risk management as we understand. It is the IT risk to the business and managing it. It's not something that if a server crashes or the physically damaged a server, the cost of replacement could be maybe around say $10,000, but that particular server may run a critical applications, and that may the time taken for suitable replacement to be put on place, and by then the implementation of the application running on it, it may take around 20 days. The loss of business because of the 20 days is the real value that could be in hundreds of thousands. So it's the business laws that counts. The IT loss is definitely there, no doubt about it, but compared to the business laws, that will be less. So we need to consider all the losses, and that is why the risk management is not something not to with IT, but IT value addition to the business, IT enabled business. That is what yesterday we were discussing about IT enabled business, that is enterprise IT. So that is the reason why I told you to again go through the recordings and kappa, because these jargons are going to repeat and repeat. So the first domain you should always, yesterday's discussion should always be in your mind, because the jargons have been discussed yesterday. Today, let us start with understanding the governance and management. A small comparison or as per ISACA. So the organization governance, I'm talking about the head IT, the enterprise governance, is mainly to evaluate, direct, monitor, and control the enterprises as per COVID, what we yesterday saw as a EDDM. The two Ds are actually converted to one, that doesn't matter. Sometimes they are actually said as a DDM or sometimes as EDM only, both means the same. And it also enables an enterprise to create value. So number one, creating value for their stakeholders or promote the creation of the value. Either you create value or help to ensure that the value is achieved. So when you talk about the governance is not actually limited only to your organ, the IT or the top levels. The governance, in fact, actually, as I said, is everywhere. So including financial accountability oversight, your operating effectiveness, operational governance, financial governance, legal and regulatory governance. Then again, operational includes your, let us say, HR and related governance, social responsibility, yesterday I showed you, and the governance of IT, that IT governance also comes into play. In fact, governance is not something that only has to happen in any commercial organization. Even non-profit organizations also need governance. Why to go to that level? A country need a governance. So everywhere governance is required. It's like taking a step back and going some steps up and taking a holistic view and a detached view. Say, hey guys, have you taken the right action? That's what you're going to see in the next couple of slides. In short, governance is answering some 4 questions which I'm going to discuss in the later slides. Couple of slides later, we are going to discuss that. So what is the place of the management when it comes to governance? So they actually, the governance management work together, even though there is a thin dividing line, they have to work in harmony. So a CEO fighting with the board, or the board might fighting with the CEO, or not setting the objectives properly, and both of them not seeing eye to eye, is going to have a major issue for an organization in case of achieving their objectives. So the objective could be anything, like as I said, profitability, market share, social responsibility, customer requirements. That is the stakeholders' needs. So mainly the management is focused on planning, building, running, and monitoring. Yesterday we saw that as a PBRM process. And at the same time, aligning the goals and objectives as given by the management with the governing body, with the operations of the day-to-day operations of the organization. And also ensure that enterprise's strategic vision achievement as directed by the governing body. So the strategic vision, how does a strategic vision is created? Can you tell me? So when we talk about the strategic vision, what is a strategy? Yesterday we were discussing about it.
Yeah, they have set the goal, right, of X plus 25%. So
Okay,
for
that is
that,
the
they need to
objective.
be, that's the objective.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm talking about objective. And
Mhm.
to achieve that objective, we have multiple items that need to be done. And that is
Mhm.
where the strategy comes into picture. So each
Mhm.
strategy will be split down by each functions, and each
Mhm.
functions is aligned with their own strategic vision.
Perfect. So strategic alignment you're looking at. So what is a strategy definition? What you Venkat, what you said is a strategic alignment and how it is being implemented. But what is the definition of a strategy?
Moving from current state to desired future state.
Perfect. Perfect. So when the organization sets the goals and objectives, that also gives an idea about what is that we are supposed to achieve. So what is your future state? What is your, all of you sitting here, what's your desired future state?
Passing seriously exam.
What is the objective?
to achieve the exam in October 15th.
Correct. Absolutely right. So now the basics are very clear. So that means you need to pass the exam by 15th of October 2021. And that is the decide future state. So right now we are attending the classes. This is one of the activities, one of the PBRM process of actually doing the things. So in the case, when you go back and review the things, what you are doing, you are actually monitoring to see whether you have understood correctly or not. So planning your time, money, budget, building, attending the classes, listening to the classes, running, that is again studying, keeping on studying, monitoring, taking stock of things. Because at the end of this domain, I'm going to give you a lot of questions for you to answer. And that you have to come back with answers. Then you have to take stock. Hey guys, am I right the right path or not? Am I studying in the right way or not? Because that is what the strategic alignment is all about. The strategy is what? To how to plan and pass the examination. And how do you go to do that? You have to put in the plans and activities in place. One of the activities will be answering the questions to see whether you got them right. And if it is not, then you're going to contact me. I'm going to help you out. So what happens in this case? There's a course correction. So that is how the entire organization also does. See, the management is trying to put their best foot forward to ensure that whatever they plan it should be achieved in the first run. But the world is not perfect. There are going to be a lot of, let us say, ifs and buts between various activities. So the idea in this case is to ensure that like you do what we can say a status check or a, let us say a spot check at different stages and to see whether we are on the right direction and do the course correction. And that is again monitoring process. So they ensure that enterprise's strategic vision achievement as directed by the governing body and finally creating value for the enterprise by resource utilization and you get performance monitoring. So what is the place of the risk management in this activity? Risk governance. So whenever you say governance, whenever you see governance, immediately the EDDM process should come into mind. Now, when it comes to risk management, let us put this way. Let us try to break the risk. What is the risk governance? So risk governance. Now, risk governance means for the risk governance of our organization risk management, what are the stakeholders? Who are the stakeholders? Yes, please.
IT will be coming into picture.
Investors, employees,
Investors,
legal
employees,
entities,
Suppliers,
suppliers. Is the suppliers. That is our Yedu's favorite area, TPRM. Correct, Yedu? Am I right, Yedu? Yedu is not able to hear me, I think. Third party risk management, supplier. Then customer. What is a
Society.
customer risk? What is a customer risk?
Which means who are giving the business.
No, yeah. What is the risk? The supplier will be
Loss of
moving away
customer.
from us. Customer not satisfied. What else you require? If I'm teaching you, so once I'm teaching you, I'm 100% sure it's not going to happen. But if you're not able to understand properly, are you not going to be unhappy with me? So you're going to tell all your friends that don't go to Srini because he doesn't have anything, no stuff. He doesn't teach properly. Then what will happen? People stop coming to me, right? So that's the risk, customer risk. Apart from that, somebody said society. Yes, society is also a risk. In short, shall we say that everybody, the stakeholders of the organization also provides the, each and everything got a risk in it. Am I right?
yeah.
All the stakeholders carry their own risk, or rather they have a risk when it comes to the organization. So similarly, when you talk about IT, who are the stakeholders of IT? Business, then suppliers, customers, regulatory bodies. Now, all these you have to understand and how this information technology, the risk in this stakeholders focus group is understood. And the main idea is to set an objective. So what is the set objective of a risk? What could be the objective? What could be expressed 25 for a risk management?
Reduce it to
Minimum
acceptable
risk.
level.
So the IT risk objective is to ensure that this reduces the IT risk to the level the management can accept or risk appetite. Am I right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Stop.
here, this is IT risk appetite. Is it IT risk appetite? Now, I'll ask you a very simple question. Every one of you heard about this particular terminology called, what is this?
Recovery time objective.
Recovery time objective.
Can anyone explain in the shortest possible manner?
Like in case of a disaster, how quickly can the systems or the backups run back to the last stage?
So when you say recovery time objective is the time gap between the a disaster happening and the time where the system should be available so that the business doesn't suffer losses.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Is
sir.
that a right definition?
That is definitely
Now, who defines this timeline? The IT or business?
Business.
business.
Then,
Depends how critical the business is. The more critical the business is, the less RTO is going to be.
no. The question is that the timeline, say, for example, disaster accident happens at this time. Now, how long, how many minutes, how many seconds, how many hours I need the system back? Who decides that?
Business.
That is the business.
Business owners.
So when they talk about the risk appetite, IT risk appetite, is it IT risk appetite really?
Enterprise risk appetite might be business.
It is an IT enabled business risk appetite. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
So here also, if you look at, it is a IT enabled business risk appetite, right? It is the business who says that I want it couple of hours and IT should do that. So the who decides the business appetite, risk appetite, or the appetite levels, acceptable risk levels?
Business.
The leadership.
Yeah, leadership, perfect. So the leadership of the organization decides that. It is coming under which category? Coming under which category?
Corporate.
Corporate governance. So risk management comes under that. So usually if you look at the board of directors are accountable for the safeguarding of the information and ensure that the organization objectives are set and monitored. So primarily the board of directors are accountable for ensuring that the assets are safeguarded properly and utilized in an adequate manner. But yesterday I also explained that a board of directors cannot directly take part in the management of an activity. Am I right?
Yes.
They don't do that. It is stamping the authority of a CEO. So what they do, the BOD delegate this authority to the CXO group, let us put that way, senior management, and they become accountable for the risk management to the board of directors. And they are responsible for ensuring that a proper risk management culture is inside the organization. Because they are the ones who are having the capability, the organization structure, the assets, the PPT, based on which your information risk, let's say risk management strategy or a risk management strategy is going to be created. Because when you say an objective that is acceptable risk levels, risk acceptance levels, this is what it is, your objective, that is the end point, decide future state, correct? Then what is the current state? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, anybody can say that? I'll just go back for you to see, because the answer is somewhere here. That is why I'm going to put over here. No, not in this. We saw the index. Yes, yes. It is somewhere here. What is the current risk status? One of this is the current state. Yesterday, I asked before.
Our risk profile.
Risk profile.
Absolutely. So risk profile. So risk profile is what we are looking at here as the current status. So the current risk profile we are going to analyze, and from there we are going to go to the risk acceptance level. This is your risk management strategy. Understood? And how do you think that risk management strategy is going to be implemented? How the PBRM happens? This is the EDM process, okay? EDM process identified this. Now PBRM process, how they should achieve this? Can anyone tell me?
Can you repeat the question, sir?
No, we have identified the risk management objectives or the strategy, correct? That is the risk acceptance level. We know the current risk, that is the risk profile. From the current risk profile to the acceptable level of risk, we need to progress. For that, we need to have a risk management strategy. Now, how that strategy will be implemented? Because the strategy is a roadmap. It is a logical thing. So it has to be physically implemented. How is it going to happen? How the PBRM happens? Okay, one is policies. Okay. Then what are the policies, sir? In order to reduce the risk to an acceptable level, what you do primarily?
You'll have to put security control in place and follow
Exactly,
policies.
simple controls. So what is a control objective?
Is to reduce the risk.
To the acceptable level, right?
Yes, sir.
And what about how does that control objective is going to be physically implemented in an organization when it comes to IT?
I think IT and other
IT
departments
security.
will enable it.
IT security.
IT security, yes.
So when you talk about IT security objectives or IT security strategy, what does that mean? So what is the IT security strategies? When you talk about strategy, what did design feature state? So when I say IT sec strategy, sorry, my pen is again giving trouble. So when I say IT sec or IT security strategy, what is my DFS? What is my design feature state? So IT sec strategy. What is the desired feature state?
Desires is the consistency in enabling, providing business the controls.
Okay, but anybody else? I really appreciated your attempt at least. I want every one of you to attempt that question. Say nothing wrong in saying what, guessing anything. I want your participation.
Probably by using some frameworks like Toga, SAPSA.
Now, what is the difference? What is the desired future state for an IT security strategy? When I say strategy, there is a current state and desired future state, right?
To reduce the risk.
Yes, to reduce the risk to what level?
An accepted level. by the
Acceptable
management
level
or-
where we can
That's it.
achieve the
They need to
objective.
make sure they reach the, they don't cross the risk appetite based on their business impact.
Same thing, same thing. So your IT security strategy, your control objectives, your risk management, everything talks about this level. Yesterday, what did I tell you? If the risk appetite is wrongly calculated, how many things goes wrong? All these things go wrong. Because
Everything will go wrong.
that is why, for example, you are talking about BCP, business continuity planning. So what is the business continuity planning? It is nothing but ensuring that the critical business operations are restored in a timely manner, the RTO, what we talk about. Again, the RTO is set up by the risk appetite function. Again, who does it? The management. If it goes wrong, your BCP goes wrong, right? And how the criticality is identified based on the risk management. If the risk management goes wrong, then what will happen? Your BCP goes wrong, right? The same way your incident response planning. Am I right or not?
Correct, sir.
So to ensure that this is properly happening, you need this. Every level, the risk has to be properly managed. Understood? So I know I took some time to ensure that, but now every one of, I'm sure all of you are clear in what I'm talking to you, right?
Yes, sir.
So the main thing is that, yes, that is ensuring that risk management as such is embedded into the enterprise. That is, enterprise means IT enabled businesses, enabling optimal risk adjusted return. That is, in every decision you take, whether to reduce, whether to not to reduce, whether to accept, not to accept, you are looking at a risk adjusted return. Yesterday, that is what I said. When I say risk, it also has a the return, positivity and loss, negativity. The idea is to reduce this and to increase the probability of this happening. You cannot actually increase the value, but when you try to increase the probability, maybe you get a better value. That is the idea behind it. So that means enabling the optimal, I'm not saying maximum, that is why I'm saying optimal risk adjusted return. This is going to be optimal by reducing this. This is my risk appetite. Now you understand the risk governance perspective.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So that is, we should never forget this. This is some basic things you have to put in my head. So now let us the governance of enterprise IT. We call it GEIT or EGIT. That doesn't matter. It's just governance of IT. See, governance is applicable to all departments within an enterprise. We talk about, let us say, strategy. Yes, we need to be governing that. Finance, it has to be governed. Marketing, it has to be governed. Legal, they have to be governed. Production, definitely need to be governed. That means there is governance is not something which is at top level prerogative. They are only the governing body. That's it. They set the objectives. But governance and the governing body are two different things that you should have a clarity. So this is how the overall governance structure happens in an organization. So the board of directors are the ones who run the organization on behalf of the stakeholders. And the senior management, using their PPT, they execute the strategic plans. So the enterprise strategy is set by the board of directors. The output. Why the strategy? Because the board of directors fix the objectives. So the objectives are clear, automatically the strategy comes into place. Correct. That is why the enterprise strategy comes in this level. The senior management derives the strategic plans and they achieve that using the business units. And that again is achieved by business operations and processes. Yesterday I showed you, right, the organization chart I showed you. Remember, like the strategy is at this level the strategies, see various C levels. Again, the strategy is percolated on operating level. So that is why business operations and processes. And the same thing, the monitoring process happens for, that is the PBRM process. At the same time, there has to be the CG also should play a place. The corporate governance should also place by having a proper risk management in every business unit and risk monitoring in every places and monitoring and reporting not only to the board of directors but to the senior management also. If you look at this, reporting is only here, but this reporting happens in two locations. Can you tell me why?
So whether they are achieving X plus 25.
Yeah, the risk guidance happens at the risk management level. The chief risk practitioner or the chief risk officer, like you and me, we are going to monitor the risk and advising the business units on operation. That is what we saw in the previous slides. It is in every unit, every level it has to be embedded. So that means the monitoring should happen at every level. That is business operations processes, monitoring, and comes under guidance to all the levels here and also monitoring. And it has to be reported back to the senior management. Why? Because we saw in the previous slide. Oh, I rubbed it off actually, sorry about it. I told you who is finally responsible for the IT risk or risk management?
Leadership.
Well, senior management. So the business and operation should give their metrics here, their operation metrics. That should be corroborated with the risk monitoring metrics. And based on which, what is done? What does the senior management do? Based on which the risk-based decisions are made. Am I right?
Right.
So now this particular flowchart is making sense to you people? All of you, if you have any issues, please right away express that problem because I have to explain you in a better way. If you haven't understood. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, you are all okay with this?
Yes, Srini,
Yeah,
no questions.
so the risk is always been managed by senior management.
No, it is managed by everybody in the organization because that is why you are looking at here. At all levels. That will be monitored by the senior management. That is, the reporting goes to them. The reporting, it's there, the report goes to them. Activities are happening at this level. Risk is activating. Risk monitoring happens at what level? At operations level and processes level. Operations and process. We always call those operations only. We don't mention process. It is again operations only. So we always say ops. Understood? So where the metrics are taken? Metrics are taken at the senior management level or at operations level?
Operation.
Senior management.
No, metrics are given to the senior management, not taken at operations level.
Operations level.
So the activities happens at what level?
Operations.
Operations level.
Operations
Yeah.
level.
And where the risk is? In the operations level.
Operations.
Yeah, it's right back. Yeah.
Exactly, that's it. So who should monitor them?
Senior management.
Yes.
And
And they are being helped by the risk management.
the
personnel.
risk management.
Yes, that means business units are supposed to implement it and they should monitor it. Whether they are doing their job or not is taken care by the risk management function. And why does the board of directors know? Now we have established up to this, okay, fine. Up to this level, fine. Then why should we again go up to this level and come here? Where in this metrics doesn't go to that level? Why?
To understand whether we achieved the desired state.
Okay. Why should the board of directors know?
They should know the outcome, right? Because
Why?
end of the day, they are the one who takes the business.
They are governing, so they must know.
Now, when the previous slide I explained that the board of directors are accountable for the setting up those objectives and monitoring. At the same time, they are accountable for the ensuring the safeguarding of the assets, right? So safeguarding the asset means manages risk, right? So the board of directors are accountable for the risk in an organization, whereas they cannot be directly involved in the management. So they delegate that responsibility to the senior management, and senior management are accountable for risk management to the board of directors. Did I not explain you?
Yes, sir.
So that means the board of directors are accountable for the risk that organization taking to the stakeholders. So for example, like you guys are not, I don't know how many of you are financially literate in the sense like having the financial qualifications. Assuming that you are filing a return, income tax return, or the, let us say, a kind of a financial results are being published for the year end with a corporate entity. I used to do that every year for 6 years, my previous employment. So when we do that, we have to ensure that the financial reports are fairly accurate. I say fairly accurate. You cannot have 100% accuracy ever. Even the accounting standards don't expect that. It need to be reasonably accurate. There is a definition for reasonableness. I don't have to get into that. That's the pure financial. So when you talk about that, when I prepare as a CFO, I prepare the financial statements and the auditors are auditing them and the final reports are made, the chairman of the board signs the report. And he under his name, the report is published in the newspapers. Now, with the God forbid, if major error is there in the reporting, in the report which nobody understood, at later stages it comes to know. These reports are filed with the regulatory bodies like the SEBI and other stock exchanges, etc. And companies, the register of companies, etc. Now, if there's a major error, and whom the SEBI is going to write, they are going to write to Srinivasan, saying the CFO, you made a mistake. Who they could ask?
Board of directors.
They are going to chairman of the board, right? The chairman will be asked the question, hey guys, why you did do that? So the chairman has to come and say, yes, because they are accountable. So that means the reporting should also go to the board of directors because they are accountable to the shareholders. And they also should know because they also monitor that. See, if you look at when you people who have done CISA course will understand the auditors can even audit the risk management process. Am I right or wrong? They can even audit the chairman of the board if necessary. They can audit any processes. Why? Because they should provide an independent view of the organization activity to the Board of directors and senior management. This is what we saw yesterday. I described you to. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So this reporting just happens, and the board of directors will take this report and give to the auditor, say, guys, audit it and see whether they're doing something or you're lying. Very simple. Got it? Ladies and gentlemen, are you all okay on the same page, or should I explain
Yes, sir.
further?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great.
Yes, we are.
So that means the governance provides accurate information to understand the threats, the subsequent risk, and the response. The senior management is supposed to provide the accurate information to understand the threat, subsequent risk, and the response tactics. Why should the senior management do it? Why? Can anyone tell me? Why does we always say the risk appetite should be defined by the senior management? Why?
Because they will have a better or a holistic view of what the risk should be for their
Perfect.
organization.
Perfect, Shifu. They have the 100% holistic view of an organization. If you go to marketing, that guy will say, my risk is the most important risk in the world, and if I'm not able to sell it, you all go to close and go. And if you go to the finance guy, he said, if I don't give the money, you are not going to close and go. Because the HR is going to ask you, or you are going to ask an HR. The HR guy is going to say that if I'm not going to give the resources, you cannot do. Maybe everybody are right in their own sense, but finally the management decide, hey guys, if I don't guide you, none of you is going to hear. So that means there's a level at a higher level who decide what is the rest of the organization, because all these guys are looking at the internal side, but the senior management also look at an external, the stakeholder side. Understood?
Got it. Sir.
Yes, sir.
So that is why they should have a better clarity about the threats an organization is facing, all-round threats, and the subsequent what kind of a decision they should take. Because sometimes the decision taken by the senior management may not be the decision which a risk practitioner would have liked to take. But at the end of the day, senior management has a better information because they have some knowledge which the CRO doesn't have. That is the reason why the decision has to be taken at the holistic level. And the response tactics. The tactics is either we are accepting the risk, avoiding the risk, treating the risk, or actually transferring the risk. We are going to see that in the third domain. So don't worry about it. And system, that is the business units, should evaluate the systems, then they should direct and monitor and ultimately control the current and future use of IT. Because the business units are the ones who are controlling IT, not the IT controlling the business units. Am I right or wrong? Now, if I want an application to be developed, is it going to IT is going to come to me, or I'm going to go to IT?
I will go to IT.
The I means business. So the business should evaluate and direct and monitor. And that is why if you look at, we are going to see, it's not, I don't know whether we are going to look at here, I forgot actually, but in CISM we have that. When how the IT is controlled in an organization. Not the
By the-
senior management. Senior management doesn't get into IT. They have too many things in their plate, they won't do that. So who does it?
Whoever the HOD is for the for IT, the steering committee.
Who are the steering committee?
The
Senior
IT steering
management.
committee.
Business units, HODs, plus the CEO maybe. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So that means they are the ones who are going to direct, because they are the ones who are going to decide and direct the IT endeavors. Am I right or wrong? And ultimately control the current and the future use of IT. Correct? So who decides the current and future use of IT? IT decides or business decides?
Business units.
Yes, business units helped by IT to do that, because the future, the IT will support, because the IT CIO will look at the futuristic is, because the future technologies like cloud, BYOD, AI, ML, blockchains, then cryptocurrencies, then let's say cloud computing, agile model. You have so many things in your plate. So whether those technologies can be adequately used and present business cases to them. See, whenever we are looking at any, let us say, projects are presented, we call them a business case. Why are you not calling IT case? Because it should make sense to the business, right? the IT should be valuable to you, right? Am I right or wrong?
Right, sir.
So that is why the system to evaluate, direct and monitor, which is run by the steering committee, which is again your business unit. And at the end of the day, who does the actual job and because of the values created?
The actual job of what, sir?
At the end of who does the actual processes and activities because of the values created?
The employees?
Everyone, I guess.
Operations level. So that means they enable the enterprises to create for stakeholders, leading to better planning and operations. So you have to look at the risk on all the three levels and all the levels in an organization. So this is what your overall the governance. The governance is applicable all the levels. So governance is applicable this level, this level, this level, this level, this level, this level. Every level it is applicable. Understood? Any questions in this slide? You need to remember this slide very well because it gives you a lot of concepts in this. Okay, next let us move on to the thing. This is a very beautiful slide. This is what I said. What do you mean by governance? In simplest terms, asking the 4 questions and answering them. Are we doing the right thing? Can we convert it to something else? In a better way to understand. For example, this is a plain English. Let us convert to the English we understand. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
So whatever I do, that should support my strategy. That means, am I doing the right thing? That is supporting my strategy. Right? The next is, am I doing the right way? Ensuring that I'm doing the right way, not stamping on anybody's authority. Ensuring that the governance is that is legal, regulatory compliance, and let us say other requirements, compliance requirements are taken care. Am I right or wrong?
Right, sir.
Yes, sir.
Then what is the next one? Am I getting that done well? While doing so, I may not, I'm using the best amount of resources. I would say,
Efficiency.
correct? Then finally, after answering the first 3 questions, am I really getting the
Effectiveness.
benefit? Achieve? Right?
Right, sir.
So this is the simplest way when you understand the governance. So governance answers the 4 questions. See, the governance, when you talk about the strategy creation, okay. So strategies are created by the organization considering some, let us say, some kind of a archetypes, they call archetypes in their mind. See, you can achieve a strategy in variety of things. Depends upon the type of industry, the type of competition you have, the type of market you have. So if you look at, there's even though ISAC has not given this particular thing, they only refer COVID. If you go back to COVID, they refer this particular theory of Michael Porter's generic strategies. Have you heard about it? Have you heard about it, Michael E. Porter's that 5-factor theory or a strategic?
No, sir.
Okay, it is in management subject. If you do that, there are so many things regarding that, how the strategy is created. So in fact, Michael E. Porter is a very, very famous gentleman. He's an economist. He's a theoretical economist, and so many things. He used to teach economics in the Harvard University. He's still teaching, I believe. He's a very highly accomplished gentleman. He has given so many theories to that. And one of the theories about Michael E. Porter's, they say here is a 5-factor theory. That is how the strategies of an organization is going to be affected. He actually has 5 dimensions to that. One is that the strategy is determined by the bargaining power of the supplier. How much you bargain, the supplier can bargain you. In the sense, you are in an industry where the supplier dominates. Otherwise, it is the bargaining power of the customer. In that case, the customer dominate. And in this case, apart from that, if these two dimensions are absent, there should be another dimension that you may have a product, but you may have a substitute. For example, Apple has a substitute like nearer to the actual product, like your EMIs and other this thing. What you can substitute products which may sell maybe the fraction of the cost of your product with the equal quality. That is a substitute products. You want to buy a Mercedes. Mercedes at the same time, a Lexus also will do the same job, which is also what you say, luxury car, but a Mercedes may cost far more than a Lexus vehicle, which is a substitute. Then they also say threat of new entrants. In a competitive industry, when the new entrants are more, the new entrants are going to adopt new technology according to the Michael Porter, and they may be more agile and they may actually kill you. For example, in the IT industry, anybody who's right now, assume that I'm starting my own company. What is my strategy? I can have every other, let us say, everything in my internally, I can have my own, let us say, website. I can have my own, let us say, IT setup. I can have everything in-house. But in that case, I have to you have to, let us say, invest an extremely high amount of money. Rather, I can go to cloud. Everything is available. I can hire the services. Still, I can give a better service. So that means I am going to spend less money, but giving a better return to my customers rather than a company who is existing for 20 years, having everything set up inside. It happens for many IT organizations also, right? So they say threat of new entrants. The fifth quadrant, the fifth theory is the most prevalent and the most destructive, according to Michael Porter's theory, is that the rivalry within the industry. So everybody is set up. Now he is saying that, forgetting that is the suppliers and customer, he says that new entrants under substitute products, and everybody actually comes into industry. When you say industry, let us say mobile handset manufacturing industry. That means Samsung, LG, Sony, then Xiaomi, Oppo, the Chinese knockoffs, then Motorola, everybody put together, they are industry. Now, within industry, the rivalry is cutthroat. So the industry rivalry, and because of that, the activities, that is a decision or a strategy adopted by one entrant or one quadrant may have an impact on other quadrants also. This is how he said the strategies are going to be decided. And why I'm explaining to you is because your IT plays an extremely significant role in deciding these strategies. Because if you are having a very good IT which provides an extremely good value to the business, that is what we say in the balance scorecard. If you say the one angle we are going to is the ability to innovate. You're able to, your IT is providing a better, let us say, value to the business, and because of they are able to innovate and they are able to bring the product faster to the business. That means they are able to actually look at the product in a different manner, and they can offer the product far better to the organizations, in the sense the market, so they can survive in the market. So this.
Sorry, I'm interrupting in between, sir.
Okay, no issues.
Sir, could you just kindly elaborate on this rivalry within the industry? I couldn't understand much, because I'm thinking it is more of a competition within the industry.
Which is rivalry? See, if Samsung is doing something, immediately Apple is trying to follow. Or if Apple is trying to do something, Xiaomi is trying to follow that. And I do like this, you do like this. And instead, for example, like if Xiaomi is actually launching a new product with a 5G technology and immediately offering a product at some, let us say 25,000 rupees, immediately Oppo will come with another product, will have some kind of thing and offer something at 24,000 rupees. Immediately Redmi will come and say that they will be given 23,000 rupees. Immediately some other Chinese knockoff will come say, I am going to give it 20,000 rupees. This is rivalry.
Okay.
Understood?
Understood, sir.
So the strategy depends upon these archetypes. That is, number one is growth or acquiring. See, the first two are actually present. The growth and acquisition and innovation and differentiation is usually practiced by whom? Can anyone tell me? Somebody tried to do the growth and acquisition but failed spectacularly. Can anyone tell me? I'm talking about mobile handset manufacturing industry for that matter. So Microsoft tried to acquire Nokia, and what happened?
The deal wasn't made.
No, no, everything was made, but nothing went through because okay was beyond it. But when you talk about innovation and differentiation, when you say differentiation, what do you mean by difference? So first quadrant, that is the growth and acquisition. The idea is that you try to grow within your organization. I try to expand you and try to heat up your market. That is acquiring. You are going to be the monopoly in the market. So that is one strategy. That is, you are going to swallow everybody. Okay. So that is what the growth and acquisition strategy. You are not going to allow anybody. So no new entrant, anybody who comes in immediately, you stop them because you buy them. Like when the Internet Explorer and Netscape, I'm sure how many of you heard about Netscape Navigator?
Heard about it, sir.
Yeah, heard about it. I used it. In the 1996, 97, they are one of the best ever browsers in the entire industry. In fact, Microsoft actually went on so that when they announced Windows 3.1, the next version from the Windows 3.1, they had Internet Explorer along with the package in the Windows operating system. Then next iteration within the Windows 3.1 next version itself, they removed it. And it was a huge hue and cry. And what happened is that time Netscape Navigator came and it was an independent platform. And everybody gravitated towards that. Immediately, I'm talking about immediately means within days, Microsoft reinstated the Microsoft Explorer with free of cost. Why? Because they know Netscape Navigator is going to kill them. And within a year, they took over, they acquired the Netscape Navigator and integrated it. That they killed it. They just bought and killed it. Why? Because they don't want a competition. That is your growth and acquisition strategy. So what is the innovation and differentiation? So whom can we take as an example? Focus on offering different or innovative products to client.
Like Android?
Absolutely, exactly opposite of Apple. If you're having an Apple in your hand is a different thing, right? They're offering very different, their products are entirely differentiated. Can you make out one Android phone from another? Whether it is a Samsung or whether it is by, let's say, Google phone, or is it by, let us say, any Chinese manufacturers? Can you differentiate between one Android phone, another Android phone by look of it?
Not literally.
No.
Yes.
But can you make it an Apple in the crowd?
No.
The sense
It's not easy. Yeah.
No, people in the industry can easily identify this because there's innovative product, right? There's a different product. The way it looks like, the way the productions are made, it is different, right? So that is what when you look at innovation and differentiation. Some product which nobody has, a niche product. The next is your cost leadership. See, in this case, what happens is that like many organizations like Chinese, sometimes even Samsung does it, they have the huge capital to support them. In the sense, they have abysmally deep pockets, huge pockets they have. And in the short-term measures, they can, let us say, take the losses. For example, let us say the new product is coming in. The new product, for example, Xiaomi is offering a similar product, let's say at 25,000 rupees. And Samsung can offer the product, same product at 24,000 rupees. They know that production cost is 26,000, but still they will offer at 24,000. And they'll put it for 1 year. They say that, okay, this 1 year loss, I will take it as a capital expenditure. What they will do, they will kill Samsung, they will kill Xiaomi. And after that, Xiaomi will go away, then they will raise the profit the cost to 27,000 rupees. That means the product will go away. That is, focus on short-term cost minimization so that what happens? The competition is not good. The new entrants or the people, the fake, the knocks off cannot survive. I mean, these are strategies. This is what Michael Porter gives us this thing. It was very widely accepted. And again, the client service or the stability. So here, this is like a niche customers. The customers will not go away from the particular product. To a certain extent, you can tell about Apple or let's say iPhone products, because once a person is used to addicted to iPhone, people say that that person will always stick to iPhone. One exception is myself. I used iPhone for 10 years. I threw it and got into Android. So that is, again, they say 95%. Let's say I'm part of that 5%. So that is one thing. On providing stable client-oriented service. Okay, the product, what your service you are looking, For example, some people will not, whatever happens, they will not go to any other product or any other hotel. They'll only go to a particular hotel or take a particular product, etc. That means that particular product or a particular service is providing something that nobody else is giving. That is differentiation for them. Client services, stability model. So the focus, when you talk about the strategy, these are the factors that need to be considered, and everything has a risk and everything has an IT risk. So the strategy and the way that strategies are defined and how IT is going to support also gives you an idea about the culture. Yesterday I was discussing about that, right? Understanding the culture is very important for you to understand the risk. Because if you look at the strategy can be defined in any way. The X+25 can be achieved in either of the four quadrants what you are seeing here. Am I right or wrong? Yes, gentlemen.
Yes, sir.
So the
Correct, sir.
the strategy can be X+25 can be achieved depending upon which industry you are in and this thing. But whatever way you adopt, the risk is going to be different, right? If you are going to be the growth or acquisition market, you are going to keep on acquiring. That means your IT should be able to take care of the so many very diverse IT systems which are acquiring companies going to have, acquired companies are going to have. You have to manage it. It's like a nightmare for any IT person. And innovation or differentiation, this is a purely R&D company. That means your heavy investments on IT, they should provide value, and the information security related things will be extremely difficult. I just say extremely important. Cost leadership, the IT should provide the best services, fast services, very innovative, because you have to cut the cost, because you have to reduce the price so that you are going to kill the competition. Client service stability, your IT should be in such a way that like, you should always provide the data in such a way that the client is happy about it. So everything, if you look at, need have an impact on your IT. So you should understand, the risk practitioner should understand what strategy an organization actually is adopting. So if you actually are interested in that, this Michael Porter's generic strategies and the 5-factor theory, if you search it in the internet, it's a real good reading for you. In fact, people who are, you are all going to be a manager sometime later in the near future, maybe 2-3 years, and you should have a very good idea about the strategy creations of things. So understanding the strategy archetypes allows the enterprise to align the risk governance process and ensure that risk efforts are evaluated, directed, and monitored in the proper context. This is what we are, the context setting in an organization. Because our context of an organization is like, for example, let us say, I'll give a very good example, a very funny example for all of you. Let's take it to any individual. Okay, let me see who is coming the first things. Okay, let us say, let's take Colonel Rameshwar Gupta ji. Because why I'm taking Colonel? Because he joined last. Sorry, Colonel, just for fun, okay?
No, sir.
Okay, so now Colonel, let us say Colonel Rameshwar Gupta ji here. Now, for me sitting here, he is a student. Okay, now for all of you, he is a group member or a, let us say, a comrade here on a cause which is passing the serious examination. Now, for his wife, he is an husband. And for his parents, he is a son. For his children, he is a father. And if he is having grandchildren, grandfather also. And at the same time, if you look at when he is working in the Indian Army, he is a colonel, a very senior ranking officer. To all these people, he is a commanding officer. For his superior, actually, he is a subordinate. But if you look at Colonel is an individual person, did he change? It is always Colonel Rameshwar Gupta. But do you think that he's going to talk to the way he's talking to his subordinate, the people whom he reported to his superior? Colonel Ji, will you ever talk to your general about the way you talk to your subordinate, maybe your major or a captain?
No, sir.
Never.
No, the same way, the way you talk to your children, do you think you're going to talk to your parents?
No, sir.
So the way you are talking to me, do you go to talk to, let us say, your students over here, other people over here?
No, sir. There will be a certain difference.
No, why there is a difference here?
So for
You have
you,
to understand.
the respect factor is always there, sir.
So that means our organization is actually in the sense like affected by the stakeholders. Am I right or wrong?
Yes, sir.
So that means how the risk is separated. So that risk is that, for example, you know that like if you talk to the way you talk to your subordinate, your superior commanding officer, you know what will happen. You're going to have a court partial things now. I'm just joking anyway. I know I don't know that too much about the Indian army. I don't understand Indian army culture. I'm just giving us an example for us to understand.
Yes.
So the same way, like what I'm saying is that like the way you deal with each and every people has its own risk in it, right? Am I right or
Yes,
wrong?
sir.
That means
Certainly.
that means the risk of dealing with one person may not be the same kind of a risk with dealing with another person, right?
Yes, sir.
That means you should understand the context of the organization to understand the risk an organization faces.
True.
And the context is heavily influenced by the, let us say, environment of the organization, right?
Sir.
And the environment is heavily influenced by the archetypes, what we see in the right, the strategy.
Certainly, sir.
So that is why you should understand this. So all of us here, I just took Colonel's example just because I saw that he is the first name when he come to mind when he opened this. That's it. No offenses meant Colonel G. Just
No,
for
sir,
example.
not at all, sir. Not at all, sir. Please.
Okay. So this is how you should understand the context of the organization, because as I told you, the organization is a subservient or always influenced by the context in which it operates. Okay, so just give me 1 second, please, if you don't mind. Sorry, I'm back. So when you talk about the context, why we need to understand the context? Because the risk is influenced heavily by the context. So this requires the enterprise's governing body to ensure that the risk appetite and the risk tolerance are understood. I gave you an example in the beginning. I told you that a risk appetite, we talked about the risk RTO. RTO is a recovery time objective. In a way, it's a risk appetite. That means who understands that? The business, the risk manager ensures that the organization context regarding an application is understood, and on that basis, the appetite is set up. So that means the risk appetite and risk tolerance has to be adequately set up, and they are communicated throughout the enterprise. Because if the risk appetite is not communicated, what will happen?
The risk team will not be aware of how much risk can the organization take.
Or rather, the team or the organization themselves, the people themselves do not understand what is risk. If they don't understand the risk, how are you going to control it?
Yep, absolutely.
That is the reason why. So what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to look at the top, and one by layer, I'm removing that layers, I'm bringing you to you so that you'll understand at each and every layer how the risk works. Without understanding this way, it will be very difficult for you to understand the risk management as such. I mean, now you are able to understand the path I'm taking. It is not given exactly the way in the review manual. I am actually in the sense like after so much of I'm taking serious classes for nearly 9 years. So what I'm teaching is the experience of 9 years too. Because in other ways, it will be slightly difficult for you to understand directly reading the book. Okay, so if you don't understand, please immediately stop me and ask me. So that means when you understand the risk at a higher level, strategic level, then you're going to look at the activities level. And from there, you're going to communicate that risk to the operations level. That is, if you look at this level. So first is understanding at this level, then understand this level, then you have to understand these levels. Then you have to calculate at this level. This is what you're talking about, the communications. So now let us look at what we are trying to say. So the understanding the strategy archetypes allows the organization to align the risk governance process and ensure that the risk efforts are evaluated, directed, and monitored in the proper context. This context is what I was explaining with Colonel G's example. This in turn will lead to the enterprise governing body to ensure that risk appetite and risk tolerance are understood properly and they are communicated throughout the enterprise. because this communication is really required to the goals of the risk management capabilities, because the goals of the risk management capability should achieve the risk appetite level. And this should be properly understood. If your destination is not clear, then the journey is going to be haphazard. So that is what we are trying to look at in this particular slide. So risk practitioners' goals. So as the risk practitioner, you and me, what we should do? We should provide accurate, complete, and timely information required to make the best, most well-informed decision possible by the senior management. So again, I'll go back to this particular slide over here. Sorry about it. So this is right here. If you look at, there's so much of scratching over here. But the risk practitioner role, this reporting role, this I'm talking about this side. This reporting role here on the right-hand side, the risk management, risk monitoring, this is usually done by the risk practitioner, the chief risk officer. This is the risk management activity. Monitor and provide the report based back to the business. So provide accurate, complete, and timely information required to make the best and the most well-informed decision which can be possibly made by the senior management. That is the idea behind it. Next is identify, assess, and advise. Identify, assess, and advise to those risks that have the highest likelihood of occurrence and or the ability to negatively impact the organization's ability to successfully achieve the goals and objectives. In short, in a simple English, identify the high-risk areas and inform to the people who make the decisions. And third, allow for the ability to balance the performance and conformance requirements that best suit the organization through the activities described above. See, this is the activity for this result. This is the third is the end result. So first is provide accurate, complete, timely information. See, risk practitioner should not fudge anything. He just reports as it is. Let the management decide. The decision-making authority will decide what should be done. The job of the risk practitioner is to provide the accurate, timely, and complete information and well-informed decisions. At the same time, advise them of the risk and advise them of the category of the risk and classify them and give them the tool to understand that. And that will allow the senior leaders, the business process owners and the senior management to take the decision, that is a risk management decision that will balance the performance and conformance. So what do you mean by balancing the conformance and performance? Can anyone tell me? Can anyone tell me what do you mean by balancing the performance and conformance? Day before yesterday's class, I explained this.
That
Apply-
corporate governance and business governance should complement each other rather than competing each other.
Correct. That is absolutely the right answer. But sorry, Pooja, but in the fun sense, I'm a chartered accountant. Okay, I'll just give this thing to you. So no offenses meant, Pooja, what I'm going to say, just as a funny note. So we as a chartered accountants, whenever we ask a report, we give a very good report. We give a report. And the management says, hey, accountant, whatever report you are given is absolutely accurate, but of no use to me. So the answer, Pooja, you said is absolutely right, the definition, but the question I'm asking is entirely different. What do you mean by the what you say, balancing the, you gave the definition of the balancing the performance and conformance. I'm asking an outcome. How do you achieve that?
By applying controls.
Okay, by applying controls is the way by which you are actually ensuring that the risk is managed. But what do you mean by balancing the conformance and performance in this particular context?
Does it have to do something with that the auditor should be independent?
What is conformance? Control. What is performance? Business process. The control should not adversely affect the business.
Yes, it should be.
That is the balance. Right? Any other explanation is required?
Can you explain conformance? once again?
Conformance is the control.
Is the security control that we put.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever control you're putting. Performance is the business processes. So the conformance should conform or regulate the business processes so that risk is mitigated. But at the same time, the balance should be there so that the performance should not choke. It should
Okay,
not
does that-
degrade. That is the balance. So there is a balance of security and balance of performance. If you try to increase security, performance will go down. If you reduce the performance or increase the performance, security will go down. That means you have to strike a balance.
Okay, just a quick question also. So
Yeah,
does that
please.
mean that we should not ask a supplier to put security controls in place, which they might not be able to, or which could be difficult for them to?
See, definitely any control that you're going to put has to adhere to what we call the SMART objective: specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, or relevant and timely. Now, when you put this, automatically your question will be answered. Because see, sometimes you want to look at a control because you're looking at one angle, a security angle. Have you ever thought in the service provider's angle?
No.
Yeah, so you have to look at that. That is why it's called a SMART objective. You have to look at all the angles because sometimes it is not possible for him to do that. Technologically not feasible. Maybe that it is also possible, it is also feasible, but at the same time, he may not be able to provide. He may not be able to provide the required SLA on time. The business may suffer, and the business will come and complain to the third-party service provider and say that you're delaying my activity. He say your security only asked me to put a control. You go and ask your security. They will come to you and fight with you. Will you want to do that?
No, but I think any auditor would not ask a supplier to do such a thing wherein, he
No, looking at
understands
an
the-
auditor. No, you are looking at an auditor angle. Remove the shiffer. No, you're not an auditor. You're a risk practitioner. Remove that hat.
Okay.
Okay, so I know that you are talking the CISA angle, talking the serious angle. That is one thing all the CISA process you have to understand. Kiran, Yadu, Shifar, others, I forgot. All of you please understand this is, you are doing the job. You are not questioning it more. You are doing the job. Understood? So
Okay.
you have to look at the risk practitioner angle. You are going to suggest the risk. You are going to implement that. Then how do you go to do that? You are going to see. You are somebody is driving the car. You are the brake. You keep on pressing the brake. You will not release the vehicle at all.
Yes, sir.
So at the end of the day, if there is a highway with maybe around say 10-15 kilometers, there's a straight road ahead. In fact, we used to have those kind of roads in my previous district country, Muscat, Oman, where I used to have a Land Cruiser 5.7 liter engine. It's a huge vehicle. When I drive it, people think that I'm a very small guy. People think that the vehicle automatically goes. They cannot see me also. So, and we used to happily go to around 180 to 200 kilometers per hour speed. That's my regular speed. Just imagine that distance between Dubai and Muscat is 450 kilometers. We do it in flat 2.5 hours. So, that is the kind of speed. Why we do that? Because we know the road is 6 sides, both the sides, 12 lane, and extremely well controlled, extremely high quality roads, and proper vehicular control, and ensure that all the drivers are properly driving. We can achieve the speed. Should I apply brakes there?
Yes, sir. Got it.
Do I need to apply brakes there? Should I go at 40 kilometers per hour?
No, sir.
No, sir.
That means you don't understand the performance requirement. When other conditions are okay, then why do you need a control there? You should understand, visit the third party, understand their requirement, whether there is any roadblocks are there. If there is no roadblock, then why you want to keep the brake and keep at 40? Let them go fast.
Makes sense, sir. So
is right.
where do you draw the line? We as an auditor cannot stop thinking like one. So,
No, we should not. That's very clear. Even the audit also very clearly says that you should understand the performance and conformance. You have to understand the risk practitioner. You have to ask the risk practitioner why the controls are not there. Understand. Ask the question. Ask an auditor why the controls are not there. Then let them explain. If they genuinely list it out, put in the report.
Yes,
So
sir.
let them clearly explain. So ask the risk practitioner. Ask let us say the third party. Then ask why the control is not there. You say this is the control I expect here, and ask them why they are not there. They say that this is not required because we are not having any roadblocks here. So that's why you don't have a control. If it makes sense, accept it.
So at times they can also come up with compensatory controls. It is not
Possible.
necessary that. Yep.
Absolutely right. In fact, when we go there, when they say the roads are there 200 kilometers per hour, we don't go. We cannot go beyond 135 kilometers beyond that speed. Why? There's a compulsory control. Can anyone tell me what is that control?
The car itself will limit
No,
the speed.
no. Call it not. For that, we don't have that, like what we call that. The machine, they have something called IVMS, we call it, in-vehicle management system. We have something called IVMS, which will automatically reduce the speed. No, we don't have that. At least in my vehicle, I don't have. But we have something else. We have something called radars in the road. Automatic radars. If I go beyond 140 kilometers per hour, it will immediately catch the vehicle, and I have to pay around 7,000 rupees as a fine. Understood? So there is a compulsory control. So, understood? I mean, this is how you have to understand. You have to sometimes link the real life examples in the way you want to do that. So if any other compulsory controls are present elsewhere, yes, accept it. Better for us. Okay, moving further. So the risk governance goals. This is very important, ladies and gentlemen. You should understand it thoroughly. Now, one of the main objectives for the risk management is having an enterprise view of the risk. Now, the entire subject we are going to look at IT risk or IT enabled business risk, to put it in a more specific way. Now, the question is that, is it the only risk management activity being done in an organization?
No.
No, sir.
So there's something called ERM I talked about, right? Enterprise risk management. So when I say enterprise risk management, we are having something called the strategic risk management. I have marketing risk management. I may have financial risk management. I have operation risk management. I may have HR risk management. I may have legal compliance requirements. I may have IT risk also part of that. I may be having others also, maybe let us say production
Regulatory.
or whatever it is, whatever. Regulatory comes in legal here, legal and compliance. So now this means each and every area will be having their own, let us say, risk management activities done. So you need to understand. Okay, let me ask another question to all of you. Now, there are many of you, like I'm sure that like Yadu and there are other people who are working BNY Mellon, right? So I think 3 or 4 of you are there in BNY Mellon, or some other people in your same organization. I think Stephen's group is coming from a Big Four. Now, all of you in the same organization. Now, I'm calling all 3 of you and asking you a question, saying that, hey, if your partners, your company's revenues leaked out, and I'm calling individually all of you and asking what is the risk you feel that if this information goes out. Now, Yadu, if I ask you separately, you have a BNY Mellon bank or some operations going on. If that information is leaked out, what will happen? And I'm asking Shifor, I'm asking, let us say, others also like that, each and everybody. I'm going to get the same result from all of you?
No, sir. Different.
No,
Why?
sir, never.
But all of you work in the same organization, all of you in the third party risk management.
But our understanding and definitions for risk will vary. It's going to be different.
Ladies and gentlemen, same organization, same department, same activities you are doing, but when asked the same question, you are having a different answers, right?
Correct.
So just imagine the risk management. You are having strategic risk, you are having marketing risk. They are all entirely different risks, right? For example, a strategic risk might be a risk at all for the marketing risk. A marketing risk may be different for a financial risk. And everything comes to different scenario when it comes to IT risk. That means at the end of the day, how are you going to align the ER to all the risk management activity?
By following some standard?
That is what the first point is. Establish and maintain a common risk view. Say this is how you are going to do that. This is what the level of risk is all about. This is how you are going to assess. This is the process you are going to follow. And this is also sometimes you go back to the business. You are going to do the second again. It's called simply. I'm showing you something like this, which is somewhat kind of a pinkish orange in color. And I'm going to say that this is apple. And yellow, all of you say, yes, sir, this is apple. Anything you see like this, you call it apple. That is called your taxonomy. Makes sense in risk management. Understood? And we are going to say that this is the kind of a control, you're going to put it that control definition. Yes, even people say that. So like that, we are going to set up some kind of a definitions. When I define it, for example, before the same questions I'm going to ask the BNY people asked, if I asked him, before that I had given you some guidelines. All of you, I given a kind of a set of guidelines independently to all of you, and you read that. After that, I ask a question. Don't you think you're going to have a somewhat similar answers?
Yes, sir.
It has to. Yes.
That is simple. Simply put, that is your definition of your taxonomy or maintaining a common risk view. Does it make sense in the risk management activity?
Certainly.
That is what your risk, that is one of the major goals of your risk governance. Because we are looking at different people are going to look at different manner. There has to be some kind of a uniformity and some kind of a sense, some kind of a method to the madness. And that method is what we call taxonomy or ontology, or in a very higher level, they are called a common risk view. Everybody will take a common view. Maybe sometimes it may be right or may not be right, but the most important thing is the uniformity. So the effective, yes, please.
Sorry to interrupt, sir. Sir, this also accounts and aligns to the risk culture, correct?
No, risk culture is different. I'll come to that later. That is a major, another demo, entirely different demo. Let us look at it in a different manner. Because everything will, the risk culture and risk appetite will match actually. See, one thing I'll tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to look at so many things which is having a prefix of risk in it: risk taxonomy, risk ontology, risk appetite, risk tolerance, blah, 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 hundreds of things with the risk behind it or be behind of it. Now, of all these things, for example, I'm saying risk, let us say, I'm talking about risk capacity. Now I'm talking about, let us say, risk, residual risk. I say that risk, this risk. And everything is about the risk management activity. There is something in the risk management activity that doesn't have any presence or anything related to at all, but that is the most important element. You know what? That is the risk appetite. Because everything has to be done, but it is being given by the senior management. And this is running the everything. That's the funniest part of it. Understood?
Yes, sir.
So the risk appetite doesn't fit anywhere. So the risk appetite calculation is based on understanding the senior management intent. And that is where the understanding the culture. Okay, after finishing this slide, we have only 7 minutes. If I'm able to finish the slide better, I'll give you the idea what is the risk culture. Because you're all interested in culture, let me give the culture explanation. So the effective risk governance establishes a common outlook for the risk for the enterprise. The common outlook for the risk. Everybody knows what do you mean by risk and what should be understood as a risk. This ensures which controls are necessary to mitigate the risk. That means you have a clarity and control and how risk-based controls are integrated into the business processes. Because you may think that sometimes right, it may be wrong, and it may be wrong, it may be right. So on the information security, because information security is the one we're going to put a control there. So this includes setting up the acceptable level of risk and tolerance. This will include, because the senior management also should have a clarity on it. So this acceptance level and tolerance we will discuss later. Integrate risk management into the enterprise. This is second governance. Now, risk management is not an activity which is carried out by the risk practitioner alone. Whose responsibility is risk in an organization?
Everybody's.
Exactly. Simple. Everybody should manage their own risk. So integrating risk management to the enterprise means everybody in the organization enforces a holistic ERM approach. That means everybody knows what is the risk is, everybody knows what should be the control is, and everybody knows how to monitor it, and everybody knows what is the consequences of if the risk materializes, how it's going to affect the organization and across the enterprise. So this requires the integration of risk management with the every aspect of the organization, from the strategic level to the operation level. This is what the first day I put it across and showed you. Each and every organization level, across the geographical locations, we are having a multinational process. So understanding that risk in one department will also have another effect. This one thing which I have not mentioned here, which I'm explaining you, is that risk is not something which is specific to one department. These are the various boxes or the departments or functions, let us say. Risk in one function may not only, let us say, confide into this area. It may be affecting this area, also affecting this area. We call it as a systemic risk. or a cascading risk. This will aggregatedly have a very high risk for an organization. Okay, so that means you should understand risk not only on a piecemeal manner, you should understand risk in a holistic manner. So that is why we are going to come to that risk identification part. When the risk identification are not made, they are not made by one single individual. The risk identification efforts are made by the team, where the team will be having the presence of all the affected people in the organization, subject matter experts. So therefore, it is important to provide both the top-down and bottom-up approaches to enterprises. Top-down is from the strategy down below. What are the things which are affecting the strategy at every level you are going to look at? Bottom-up approach is like a generic risk scenarios. What if an aeroplane comes and hits my office? What if there's a power cut in my office? What if there is a water logging? What is a, let us say, this kind of a thing called a generic risk scenario, which is a bottom-up, going up towards your strategy. Both are required. Both gives a different perspective, and both should be completed. So that is the integrating the risk management effort. And third is make risk-aware business decisions. To make risk-aware business decisions, the risk governance function must consider the full range of opportunities. As I told you, risk is not a negative thing. It is a combination of a positive and negative thing. You don't take risk, you don't survive. This is where the risk appetite comes into place, or risk culture comes into place. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the X plus 25 as an objective. 25% increase in parties for this thing is a 1/4 of your achievement. Do you think it can easily be done? 25% increase in the profit, it can be easily done.
No, sir.
It's going to be really
No.
a kind of a very high requirement. That means because of this, the senior management have to take high risk. They have to do so many risks they have to take. This shows that they are able to take high risk. That means they have a high risk appetite. Understood? This is how you are understanding that. For example, if for example case, this instead of X plus 25, if it is X plus 15, it is moderately achievable. So I am not going to take this many risk. So I will take only this many risk or this many risk. This is a risk neutral culture. I'm not going to chase the risk, but any risk comes in my way, I will take it. This is risk neutral culture. But let us say that in a very unlikely scenario where the achievement is X plus 5%, the CEO sitting in his chair can do this easily. So he will not take any risk at all, which is called a risk averse culture. So the appetite will be, risk appetite will be very, very, very low because I don't want to take any risk at all. So this is what the risk practitioner should understand. And this will be understood by what we saw that in the previous strategies. That is the, what we talk about the various, what do we call that? The goal setting process. The Porter's listing, what we saw that here. The strategy, enterprise strategy archetypes. This is what the Porter's generic strategy. So any of these strategies can clearly gives an idea about the context and also gives a risk appetite. Whether he is, for example, cost leadership is extremely cost sensitive. That means you're not going to go anything for the expenses purpose like that. Growth and acquisition, you're going to left and right center, you're taking risk. So like that, you can have client service stability, you're going to look at a client side. So that means compliance and related things will be very high. So you should understand what are the various strategy types and accordingly the risk appetite is understood when it comes to risk. Then finally, they ensure that risk management controls are implemented and operated correctly. Governance is also monitoring. That is the audit job. So the controls are put in place to reduce the risk to an acceptable level, and they should work properly. So this provides oversight and due diligence to ensure that the enterprise is following up on the implementation and monitoring of the controls, leading to effective controls for mitigating risk and protecting enterprise success. So, ladies and gentlemen, when do you think that controls are said to be effective?
When you test them,
Sorry?
when you start testing the controls.
When you say effective is what? When my teaching will be effective on 15th of October, all of you pass the exam, right?
Yep.
That is the effectiveness is the result, right? So result of the control is what?
I didn't hear the question, sir.
What do you mean by effectiveness of the control? When the controls are said to be effective?
Imagine
When the objectives are
go
met.
Sorry,
When
Objectives need to be met consistently.
Objectives are met.
then
The
when is
desired-
what is the objective?
Risk mitigation.
What is the control objective?
So your future state that you have defined is your
That is the-
objective,
What is that?
and it need to be met
To
consistently.
reduce
and
the
that is what we
risk
want.
at the acceptance level.
Absolutely, very simple. Answer is always there to reduce the risk to acceptable level. An effective control is the one which reduces the control, which is supposed to control to the acceptable level. Finish mitigating the risk. Effective control is mitigating the risk to risk acceptance levels. So that means monitoring process. When you talk about the monitoring process, is that ensuring that number one, risk is present. When you go for an audit, okay, Shifa and all the people who pass this examination. When you do an audit, what do you check?
First of all, the scope of the engagement.
No, when you check an audit, when you do the control evaluation, what do you do?
Effectiveness.
Evaluate the risk.
No, I'm saying evaluating the control. When you're checking the control, your compliance testing and substantive testing, right?
Yes, sir.
So what do we do in that? So number one, we see whether the control is there, whether the control is present.
and it's
Second, the control is
Implemented and-
operational. The control may be there, may not be operational. The control may be present, the control may be operational, whether finally is effective. That is doing the job or not.
Operational effectiveness.
Yeah. So these are the three things we are going to do in audit, when you do the audit, right?
Yes.
So same thing, with the first domain, we saw the disease. Same thing here. So again, the risk management controls are implemented, operate effective. This is your job of your CIO. Very simple.
This and my skin is still looking like this.
Sorry.
It's 20 in the afternoon. Foundation still looks the same. Luckily, the foundation has not settled in the.
Hello, Kiran, are you saying something?
No, sir, I'm not.
Because there's a sound from your side. Anyway, leave it.
Sir,
Okay, so
I don't know, but my laptop is on mute.
I didn't have any idea because just I muted you because there was a background, some as if somebody is talking or some kind of instruction, something like that. Anyway, leave it. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we can wind up today's class. And any questions for whatever we covered?
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, what about others? All of you are good?
Good, sir.
Yes, sir.
good, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
Yes,
I'll
sir.
try to put the recording by today, and you have a couple of days time, Saturday and Sunday, and ensure that both the days recordings you just go through once, so we have a fresh mind, and let the basics be very clear, and we can discuss about that. Subsequent, this thing. What are the subsequent ones? Okay, context of risk management we can talk in the next class. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, have a nice weekend and have a safe weekend, and let us meet by Monday.
Thank you, sir.
sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all of you. Thank you. Bye-bye.